Hey everyone, welcome to the 14 Wins podcast, where we talk about UFOs and all the related high strangeness. I'm Bones, and with us, of course, is the notorious RamX.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Ram. So, we're on track to crank out some new episodes, and you just got back from the Sol Foundation conference in San Francisco?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're gonna
just hopped off the plane.
You're gonna have to talk about that. That's a big deal. We were planning on talking about some remote viewing. We may touch on that if we have time, but I really want to hear about your experience there, and maybe start off by just explaining what the Sol Foundation is.
Sure. The Sol Foundation is an organization that's being led by Gary Nolan, Peter Skafish, and others. Those are probably the biggest names in the news. David Grush is a part of it. That's a big name.
Yeah.
There's some pretty big names that are in science, government, defense, and I think I understand the agenda of that organization now. So that was one thing I wanted to talk about in my assessment of the whole time there. I mean, it's really to influence policy. It's really to influence government policy.
Right. And you just literally just got back, right? I mean, you just jumped off the plane, right?
Yeah, I'm an hour off the plane, and I knew everyone was going to be interested in what happened there. And there is some juicy bits that went out.
Nice.
And then, I think people would probably be interested in outsiders' opinion of the whole thing.
Definitely.
I guess I should just start with
where to begin.
Who was
Go ahead.
Who was all there? So, it's a small event. It's like 400 people. I think total around. Maybe more. And so it felt very accessible to talk to everybody, and everyone there, I think it was invite only, so everyone there was interested in UAPs, obviously,
right.
And then was some involved in some form of research, or was it advantageous to know in some other way, I think.
Did any of the experiencers talk? Was there, I mean, did they have like a keynote speaker? Oh, really?
So I think there was a lot of confusion, right? Like even when people started looking at the conference lineup and what the topics were all going to be, it was very grounded, which, I really understand, like I said, I think I understand that Sol Foundation has two main goals, which is to make known that the UAP phenomenon is real. I actually think they're trying to present it as a problem, and there is a problem within it. So I don't think that's dishonest. And then I to influence policy within it.
Right.
It seemed very clear to me that was the agenda. And I don't think that's whitewashing it, because you could look at that as not whitewashing at all.
Right.
That is an example of someone trying to become the next layer of information, gatekeeper. And I would certainly rather have this whole foundation gatekeeping UFO information than others. But, understand that people are looking to influence policy. And that's what that is.
I mean, at its core, it is a problem. I suppose you can see it as that. I mean, it is a problem people and organizations are trying to understand and solve. And,
yes.
But, I mean, when you as an individual are attempting to solve it, you risk exposing yourself or, being viewed as part of the problem.
Sure. And I would say at least half of that audience was defense related. And
wow, really? Wow.
At least half the speakers.
Wow.
And I mean, people like Rear Admiral Tim Galladay was the first speaker, and he gave a really interesting talk. Oh, and I want to clear something up because I'm going to do a little inside baseball, and I'm also going to try to make this for everyone. But the inside baseball piece of this is that we've talked about a guy named Jay Stratton, and it came out that he was the one who actually erased the original Go Fast video, which was one of the Tic Tac videos, released in the encounter, and he erased it back when he was working for the UAP task force. So if someone told him to do that, and it's not an illegal order, of course he freaking did it.
Right.
And I think what Gallaudet is saying is not that immediately hit the internet as Jay Stratton is a UFO gatekeeper. The level that this conspiracy is at, and I think the level that other people in the government are on this subject is more clear to me now after this conference, and I'll try to make those parts more what I talk about, because first of all, there's a blow by blows of what happened there happening on Twitter. I think Matt Ford and Joe Murgia were both tweeting a lot about what was said at the conference. So anyone, you might want to check them out. I know Reddit had some posts about it, because I had to look on Friday night. The first day of the conference was Friday, and Eric Davis, this was the juiciest bit. So let me just tell you that, I guess. So you know where to look. Eric Davis is a scientist and physicist who has worked on a number of programs that touch anomalous-like things, UAP specifically. He's loved in the UFO community, and I can see why. He's very honest, and that is what he's known for. He's known for saying a lot, and there was clearly people there trying to get him to say less. So I would really point that out.
Interesting.
Yeah. People's Soul Foundation. There was definitely some stage antics when he started saying some of this stuff. So
really,
that was interesting. Well, and that's going to come out too. So I see no reason not to say it.
I mean, he's a legit physicist, right?
Yeah. And I so how that's going to make people go, well, what is Sol's agenda? Well, I just told you. That's why I led with that. Sol's agenda is to influence policy. So they're like, well, if we are telling people things that DOD doesn't want them to know, they're not going to want to listen to us about policy.
Oh, right.
So that's going to end up becoming 50 other different conspiracies.
Right.
But the one real one should be enough. Like that is how the world works. It works on policy. There's rich people, there's poor people. The rich people choose the elected officials, and so who's really running the world, right? And so these guys understand the whole game. There was so much money in that room that I don't know. I've never been around that many not CEOs, right? I've been around plenty of CEOs. Like these are the people that started the companies,
right?
CEOs work for. And so there was that was important to know, like that the guest list was mostly really well connected, important people, and that's super cool to see.
Yeah,
that type of interest around UFOs.
Yeah, people with sway.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what it's going to take.
Yeah.
And there was just some of the panels, some of the discussions were around like how to get money into this or from it, because that will actually start driving some things. And I talked to an investment guy while I was there, and it was really interesting. Gave me some insight into that. I don't have anything like this, and I don't know that I'm particularly interested in pursuing it, but maybe someone else out there is. If you're developing something that could benefit the UFO research field, and it also has a commercial application, that becomes extremely saleable.
Sure.
Because like I said, right, that room's full of really important, wealthy people. where if they were like, well, I can support UAP research and at least make my money back, like you'd get a lot more interest in something.
Right.
So I want to put that out there to everybody because I think that's good info. Something to pay attention to. Oh, but so the juiciest parts. Eric Davis. So he starts talking about the reason Eric Davis saying any of this stuff is such a big deal is he was working for James Lukatsky, who's a senior scientist at director at OSWAP, which was like the parent program of the program that like was looking into UAPs. I mean, this was a big scientific endeavor, OSWAP. And so as sort of James Lukatsky's deputy, Lukatsky gives Davis a letter that allows him to go to any base and talk to anybody and say, I'm James Lukatsky's guy. I have access. I have a need to know. So and let me point that out really quick because I want to start saying this a lot. There is a big misconception that gets wrapped up into a bunch of conspiracy BS about how classified information works, who has it, and it's so important to understanding how this secret is being kept. Is how does legally, not in the land of social media fiction, like how does really legally classified information work? And the way it works is that there's only two ways that someone can get classified information. Number one is if you have a need to know. You've all heard that one. Number two is if you can contribute. They have a need to read you in so that you can make a decision about it. Like, say you're an elected official and they go, okay, well, it got crazy and there's a UFO hanging out over University of Georgia. So we need the president to pick plan 1, 2, or 3. We're going to have to read them in real quick and go, these are your options. So like that would be one of those times where all of a sudden the president, has a need to know, right? Or if you can contribute, right? They need something from you. Like you're a physicist that is the only one that deals with this one quantum anomaly that they found on their craft. And so they have to read you in enough, just enough for you to tell them the answer to the question.
Right. That makes sense.
And that's how that's called, right? That makes sense. And then that compartmentalization happens there. So that's that. Then it gets compartmentalized because I only have to read that physicist in just enough for him to answer the question.
Right.
So then the only people that know the whole view is going to end up being a super small group. I've said that many times, right? But those are the people that are making decisions about something that affects our reality, and they are not elected.
Right. That's an important point.
Yeah. Pretty important point. So, I mean, I think Congress can run with that. Anyway, so it's stuff like that. I think that is helpful, and maybe that's part of what Sol's doing. But they're really coming at it from more of a scientific and there was defense point of view. Dr. Wendt, who did a remote talk about human security and UAP. And I think that one might end up being available online too. So check that one out. Yeah, I mean that's like a couple reasons to check it out. Is that's dealing with like, okay, the government acknowledges that ET are a threat, and then what do they do about it? And he's a political scientist that deals with and policy analyst that deals with. That's all sorts of catastrophic scenarios. So
okay.
Another very serious guy taking the subject very seriously and saying, okay, this is how it would work. And that's what a lot of what they were doing there was demonstrating, okay, this is how we would take policy seriously. So that was clearly their agenda. Before it gets it steamrolls out of control.
Right.
And that will explain why in between sessions, like people were kind of upset, I would say, depending on who they were, Obviously, if you're coming from Lockheed, and there were people there from Lockheed, retired Lockheed, first person I met there. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Setting the tone. And so, anyway, yeah, there was all sorts of people there. There, people coming out. I think the people who were most familiar with UAP research were coming out of it and going like, "What the hell is this? Like,
Really?
where is? There was not any discussion of consciousness. Like, there wasn't any discussion of where the edge of the research is, and I think people were really confused by that. So that was one thing I really wanted to come here and say, because I think these things, they get so blown out online, and you're going to find the juicy bits if you go to like Joe Murgia's page or Twitter right now, and Matt Ford's, and please do go look at what Eric Davis said. Those are the juiciest bits. What he said was about which presidents have been read in and what they have been read into.
Really?
That was mind-blowing. The guy sitting next to me turns to me and goes, "Dude, did we just get fucking disclosure?"
Yeah, right.
and that's confirmation. I mean, this man he had the need to know paper. Mm-hmm. That's where I was going with all that. Right. It's good, but it's a good thing that I'm going to explain that a few more times, because I think that's another thing that gets really caught in the misinformation funnel out there. But he had that need to know paper. So that gave him the right to the whole enchilada, to whatever he was looking at. So that's how he got that information. So when he tells us that this is what presidents have been read into and this is what they haven't, he's not lying. Like, he has had firsthand knowledge. And he, based on what he was saying there, Grush had some firsthand knowledge. So those are the types of things Grush could not talk about. So those things changed the context, changed the subject.
Did that happen? When did that happen in the context of the whole? Was that in the beginning of the?
It was like, I think maybe the third speaker.
Really?
And it was Davis, and
suddenly, bam!
It was crazy because it came out at the end, and there was clearly gatekeeping going on right next to him, brushing of his hand, kicking of the foot. Like, yeah. I mean, it was on stage, so it was pretty obvious. But Eric is well known, and like I said, well loved for being what people close to him have called incapable of lying.
Okay.
And there's very common among analyst types and scientific types. I mean, when people call me on being too evasive about saying I'm absolutely certain this is it, it's because if I'm 1%, off, I'm still can't say I'm absolutely certain, right? So, Eric Davis is that to a much larger degree, and so when he's saying this stuff, everyone, it is confirmation. He was in a position to know. He has zero history of lying. Like, when he said that stuff, it was confirmation. So he says it, and like I said, there's a little gatekeeping going on, and then there's normally a Q&A, and they were supposed to be doing a Q&A, and then they go, "Oh, it's time for the Q&A," and the whole place jumps up. 100 people must have started rushing down to the mic, and everyone's buzzing, and then they're like, "Okay, actually, we're going to break for lunch." And, but Eric did come back. They were like, "Okay, we're going to have Eric come back and talk later." So
no kidding.
He talked about some really amazing stuff. So I was not note-taking to the degree that I think I should have been to give you all of the best bits. So that's why I keep telling you, go check out those Twitters.
Okay.
I think they got the blow by blow.
So what was the general take on it all? What do you think? Was everyone, because you said people were kind of disappointed?
Yeah, I think people who were not, included in the whole policy discussion, and that were really there for UAP truth, that were really there for UAP information, I think those folks were coming away pretty disappointed.
Okay.
And that's why, I wanted to say, I think it was very clear to me that that's not what this was about. But that's good to point out, because we've been looking in that direction. Like, we've been looking at the people involved there and going, okay, what are they saying about this? What is Gary saying about the material evidence? What is Gary? Well, it's very clear Gary has a policy-driven agenda. Okay. So what he is saying and what he is telling us does get us excited, but we also, I guess, need to support him in doing this, and that is why he's doing it. So there's an agenda behind it. It doesn't mean that it's a bad agenda, but there's an agenda behind it. So we shouldn't be looking to him for UAP truth.
Right.
I that's a good news, bad news situation there. It comes back to, I think we need to find ways in the public to solidify this. And for me, I came away energized, impressed at the types of people in that room and what they're doing with it all. But I was energized because there isn't that many people doing what we're doing. And I said, I think this is actually really important, what we're doing. And when I was showing people like this type of meta-analysis, and they were pretty surprised and pretty interested, right? So I was like, oh, wow. I think what we're doing is actually more important than I thought.
Yeah.
Because these are the conversations people really want to have. And this is the advanced class of UAP, right? Where we are. I think we were going to try to talk about remote viewing today, but if we can't deep dive into it, I don't think we should. Okay. Because we'll go old school 14 wins on that one. And I really want to say, look, this is what it is from a scientific standpoint. And really, no one is doing that. And the impression that I got from those folks at the Sol Foundation was they're not that all that interested. And the impressions, my first impressions, whatever, like they're not all that interested in the public research aspect of this.
Okay.
Like that they're interested in doing it, their way through, their startups and their scientists and their people. And, it ends up becoming just another separate layer, and that's a shame. But it's also, maybe it's necessary. In order to influence policy, they have to be, they can't really talk about like Skinwalker Ranch, right?
Right.
They've got to keep it to UAP, and they've got to keep it to a threat. And so this is where I was going before Sol, and I feel like it confirmed a couple of things for me. And it also, I want to talk about something that I was completely wrong about, and I'm excited to be happily wrong about that. So for one thing, I thought maybe Sol was going to lead some research efforts that would be exciting to the field. I do not think that that's the case.
Okay.
I don't think that we should be looking to even Nolan really as the solution. Whatever they're willing to share is great, and but they're doing their own thing. Period. So that's that. And then what I was wrong about was I thought Galileo might have been gatekept because he was talking about bringing on Mellon and Elizondo as advisors to what should and shouldn't be disclosed. And that's just more of the same voices. So I said, and they're already deciding what to disclose and not to disclose of their classified stuff. So that didn't sound good to me. And I'm pleased to say Avi Loeb gave a talk up there about what they've been doing with Project Galileo, and it's super cool. I think it's all public. You can find it all publicly through Project Galileo. The meteor that they ran down and the spheroids, and why they believe that meteor is anomalous, and that they found those spheroids, anomalous spheroids, and their next goal of that expedition is to find the core of that object. So that's the type of public and transparent science and exploration we need. And Galileo's doing it. And Galileo's getting the money. Like Avi Loeb had to raise $6.5 million to do that last expedition. And they're talking to people now, but hey, if you're a millionaire and you want to, I think that's another thing I want to do is give people my read on a few people that I talk to in person that get talked about, and are they for real? Are they legit? Are they on our side? Are they on somebody else's? So I got to talk to some people in person. I got to read on some of that.
Cool.
And I'll say it. Just my opinion.
Give us the juice.
For sure. I talked to James Fox for a long time.
Yeah.
That he gets put on the list of extremely trustworthy.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So I think people can trust James Fox. I think they can trust his information, his integrity. He's sacrificed a lot. Stuff he told me is not for me to tell. Maybe he'd come on here and tell you himself. I don't know. Or he may go on another podcast and you may hear it there. But yeah, super quality guy and kind of laying it on the line for UAP research, which is really cool.
Right on.
He's got a new movie coming out next week called The Program. And I saw it while I was there. It was really good.
Oh, cool.
So I'd recommend that. If you're super familiar with the topic, you're going to say, oh, there's not enough new here. And we were talking about how that is always going to be the UFO community's reaction, right?
Right.
Just like they're going to react to the Sol Foundation. They say, well, there's not enough new here. And then James is going to come out with his new movie. There's not enough new there. But you got to remember, just like Sol Foundation is intended to influence policy, so they're not going to talk about Bigfoot, in that setting. And then the James Fox's movies are intended to be for everyone. If you don't know anything about the UAP phenomenon, you can watch James Fox movie. And he tells you all you need to know in the film. So there's not enough time for him to go, okay, if you're at this stage of the UAP game, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, so he's a fantastic filmmaker, but he's really, like I said, he's laid it on the line for UAP research, and he was at the hearing, so that was interesting to hear about. And so, yeah, James Fox, quality guy.
Cool.
So yeah, Whitley Strieber, I think he's very legit, and got to say hi to him and exchange some words. So that was cool. And yeah, I think he's a legit guy. I met a ton of experiencers.
Yeah.
And this was where the Fortean piece started happening because I didn't have RamX or Fortean Winds on my name badge, right?
Right.
And I only like one person there prior to me going knew that Fortean Winds was my website.
Mm-hmm.
And so now a bunch of people do. I think I'm kind of outed, but so yeah, anyway, these people didn't know that Fortean Winds was my website, and these experiencers, I assume, were validated somehow because they got into the show,
right?
And so they were just coming up to me, and they were like, "I want to tell you my story."
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It happened to me 4 times in the 2 days,
maybe
during the breaks, and I said, "Okay," and they immediately launched in and felt very comfortable. And I this is my website, right? And I show them, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, yeah." Like, okay, please continue. So it was very strange to be, I think the one of a few Forteans there, right?
Right.
Belay got sick, so he wasn't there. maybe count I would count Strieber as a Fortean, because I made a Fortean comment. He said, yeah. And so maybe us, Jeff Kreitball, he's Fortean guy for sure. So there was a few there, but yeah, they kept like finding me.
Huh.
It was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And one of the women was a leader. Maybe she'll come on here too. Is a leader of an experiencer group, and she was able to describe my experience without me really telling her about it. That was pretty cool. She's medium.
Huh. Okay.
And that was weird. That was what I was going to tell you about before. That I was like, dude, something freaked me out.
Yeah.
Yeah, but now I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm not freaked out. Yeah. Just a Fortean doing Fortean stuff.
Right.
So yeah, that was really interesting. Carl Nell did a final fireside talk with Gary Nolan. And that one was really interesting because Carl had kind of laid out what the government would have to think through. And Carl was in a position where he would actually present something like this to Congress or to, which would eventually go to a president. Like he was in a position within the defense community, and he was working on UAP stuff where he would present something like this to policymakers. So he had thought it through, and it was pretty interesting. Right. So I from a policy standpoint, what would legislative policy look like from UAP? So I would suggest people check that one out too. If you want Carl Nell talking about some juicy bits, catch him on the SALT conference. Just look up Carl Nell SALT. That might give you more, more of the compelling stuff,
yeah, cool.
The policy stuff. But I thought it was interesting, and it's cool to see an expert like that breaking it down.
Right on.
I did kind of also take away, like, there is no research organization out there that's going to do this for us.
Right.
It doesn't exist.
Right.
And it should. But we need something that is more like a startup incubator that's taking on the UAP problem.
Right.
I think. And, they even talked about it there. We have some articles on the website, and like in one of the presentations, it talked about, we went back to the difference between evidence and proof, and how getting data is so difficult with UAPs, and how you have to learn to adapt the method. You have to adapt the method to UAPs. You can't expect UAPs to conform to the scientific method.
Right.
It was funny because 3 days before I went to the convention, I was having a conversation, like, socially with this physics professor, and he said, "Yeah, I'm never sure what to make about the UAP problem." And it started with, there's a lot of information out there. You don't have to stay in the dark. You could look at it and make your own assessments.
Right.
But then he said, "Yeah, there was a video, and it may be parallax." And I said, "Okay, well, did you believe the pilots?" He said, "Yeah." "Well, how do you square that circle?" And he just kind of shrugged. And he's like, "Eh." And I said, "Okay." So, well, I'm not entirely sure that this phenomenon will ever conform to the scientific method. You know what he said to me? It should.
It should.
It should.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah, reality should conform to the scientific method. Okay.
Okay.
It's not the method that needs to change.
Right.
It's perfect. That's religion, bro. That's religion.
Right.
That you're turning science into religion.
Right.
And this is what we're facing. And there was a number of people at this conference that were religious. Like, it was really surprising. And it was, some of the scuttlebutt in the crowd too. Like, all these people are Catholic.
Interesting.
Yeah. There was Mormons too, but there was a lot of Catholics. Yeah. So there was religion there. It wasn't absent. That was interesting.
Were there religious leaders there? Or just
No.
Okay.
No. Yeah, good question. Yeah, there was no one like that there.
Okay.
Mm-mm. It was just, I guess it was surprising to find out that so many people involved in the UAP field are Catholic. And this keeps being said, but I guess it was confirmed there. It sounded a little conspiratorial to me that people were saying, oh, they're all Catholics. And I'm like,
oh, really?
Yeah.
So it actually came up.
Yeah.
They're all Catholics.
It actually came up. I'm like,
that's interesting.
It wasn't by me either.
Right.
The information was volunteered to me. I was like, oh, interesting.
Yeah.
That's something new I wanted to talk about. On the last episode, I was like, okay, I want to ditch all my secrets, right? I'm going to try this new thing of being completely open and transparent with the audience. Whatever I haven't validated is the only thing that I won't talk about. And then I went to Sol Conference. And now I'm going to go back on my word and double down on RamX is now keeping all the secrets. Like, all the secrets. Like, go for it. Yeah, tell me. And I won't tell anyone. So the audience is just gonna have to deal with that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I can't tell other people's secrets.
Right.
It's a little ridiculous that people in the UFO field expect that.
Yeah.
But I can't do that. But here's what I can do is I can say, look, that rule definitely does not just apply to people in the UFO research community or UFO community. Like, that applies to anyone listening and anyone in the public. Because if you tell me something and you say, don't say this on air or on the website, I'm not going to say it. If you tell me, hey, you can say this, but don't use my name, I'm not going to say your name. And if some of you have reached out to me and you know this, like, I'm not going to say your name. I'm not going to talk about it unless you tell me explicitly it's okay. And if you wanted me to talk about it, please write me back and tell me it's okay to talk about it.
Right.
So I understand also that some of these things get very personal and very scary for people. They don't understand that this is real. It's one thing, and this is something Carl Nell said at that Sol Conference, right? Like, it's one thing. It would be one thing to understand your religion and to have absolute faith. But if you come walking in and like the angel Gabriel is standing in your living room, like, it's a different thing altogether to understand that it is a physical reality.
Right.
There are people there who definitely understand it's a physical reality. And I think when people expect, they play these games with UFO information and demand all the UFO information now and demand all the, like, this is real. Mm-hmm. It's not just a dopamine hit on the internet. Right. So, like, if someone's being traumatized by this and is terrified of it,
right,
and is terrified on the government reaction to them because they've been traumatized by it,
right,
like, you can't expect me to talk about that. Like, and if they don't want to talk about it, you should really respect that.
Yeah,
it's real. So, anywho, secrets, A-okay. They're back on the menu.
I mean, maybe that's a good thing. Why they had so many experiences there. It kind of keeps the whole conference in check. It's like there are all these people there, where for them it is extremely real, and what you're talking about affects them personally in a very deep
absolutely
way.
Yeah.
It's pretty. Yeah. It's cool. It's good to hear that there were that many experiences there. That's cool.
Yeah. It's good to hear that they take experiencers seriously. I mean, it was, but and I think there was confusion about, like, well, why aren't we talking about any of that? And it's because they're trying to influence Congress, and
right,
if you start saying that stuff around Congress, and Congress is going to be like, what? This sounds kooky,
right?
And it is kooky. Like, you're in the advanced class here in 14 Winds, and I have to say, like, it occurred to me, right, as I'm watching this policy discussion, that let's say all this policy passed and we had some form of slow drip disclosure, and it wasn't like catastrophic disclosure where, like, UFOs show up over every town a la Independence Day and we all have to learn everything all at once. That's catastrophic disclosure, by the way. It's something that can't be hidden.
Right.
And that was being discussed there a lot.
Oh, okay.
I guess we'll address that. That's pretty juicy. Yes. So there's a year that keeps getting bandied about. It's either 2026 or 2027. And this has been told to some pretty credible experiencers. John Ramirez is one of them, the former CIA agent who then became involved in CE5. And he has heard this, and he's heard it multiple times. And he said he's even related to people within the government that the phenomenon has been saying it's going to show up in either 2026 or 2027. And then Chris Bledsoe hears it, and we have talked about how he's been validated. So, yeah, the phenomenon appears to have said it's going to show up in either 2026 or 2027. And this was one scenario that a gentleman there who was a former defense policy advisor said he thought was could be happening based on the government's current response to the UAP problem. He thought we were in some form of controlled disclosure, and that it was being driven by either an advancement from China that, and this was outside of the sessions.
Okay.
This is one of those things. So this is one of those things that's like, hey, I could either tell you or not, but I'd rather tell you. I'm not going to give away anyone's name. This was someone who did this type of analysis for defense level policymakers. It was a good analysis. And it's basically like, based on the information I'm seeing, this is either being driven by a foreign actor's advancement. They've made a jump over us. Probably China because we do know that they have a UAP program. There's been rumors for a while that it's ahead of us. They've certainly got the ability to train their AI because they decided they're going to throw away all the rules and train their AI on everything, right? So their AIs are able to train in ways that ours are not. So that might allow them to do some UAP breakthroughs that we can't. We'll see. But that may be a cause for disclosure. The government may be saying we have to tell everyone because China's going to start flying around in UFOs. Or it's being driven by this 2026, 2027 date. So he was taking that seriously. We've never talked about that because up until this point, and actually still now, I even said it at the conference, I said, I think that this is prophecy. And it doesn't mean that it's wrong. It's just that we all know how prophecy goes. And if you read through the phenomenon the way we do, and you accept that it's been involved in certain points, it said things like this before, even in the 1960s. It was telling people we're going to show up here, and then it didn't.
Right.
So I do believe that the phenomenon said that. I think we have no way of knowing whether or not it's serious this time because it doesn't appear to have been serious any of the other times that it said it. But that was being talked about. And if the government is facing that scenario where the phenomenon is saying, hey, we're going to show up in 2027,
right, you
better tell everybody, everything. Now, this phenomenon does have a sense of humor, so it would be hilarious. I want to tell our NHI friends there, it would be hilarious if they said, all right, we're going to show up. And they made the government tell us everything, and then they're like, haha, just kidding.
Right. Why you?
It's the type of thing they do.
Yeah.
Anyway. So, yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, that's really cool.
But stuff like remote viewing was not talked about at all. At all.
I mean, I guess there's only so much
we'll
you
definitely
can cover.
take that on next time.
I mean, it's not the biggest conference in the world, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was my first UFO conference. I don't know.
Right.
It was a small, like I said, an invite only guest list or whatever. So it was directed, and everything had gravity, and I felt like if you started getting into consciousness aspects and whatnot, people wouldn't feel that it has the same gravity.
Yeah.
So
I get it. Yeah.
They have to do it that way. Yeah. And that's what's sold. But we shouldn't be looking to them for answers to these questions. So people, we need something out there that's going to start taking questions like this more seriously. Yeah, think about it. I'll think about it. How about 14 wins? Let's grow 14 wins.
Heck yeah. Mull that over. So that was super interesting. I think we should just probably save remote viewing for the next episode. What do you think?
Yeah, agreed. Let's remote viewing is worthy of a deep dive. And I want to get back to the old school 14 wins format,
right, where
we tell you what it is, whether it's real or not, and what it all means.
Right on.
Or what we think it means. All right, man. So we'll do that soon.
Well, that was really cool. I mean, that's just great. You jump off the plane and we can discuss the Sol conference. That's awesome. So next episode, old school 14 wins. We're going to talk about remote viewing. How's that sound?
Yeah, let's go old school. What is it? Is it real? What does it mean? We're going to go old school FW on this one. Sounds good, man.
Right on. All right, well, thanks for listening, everyone. Good talking to you, Ram.
Good talking to you, brother. Talk to you next time.